All right, this morning I want to talk to you about grace. Okay, how many know we need grace in our life? Amen. All right, the title of the message today is called "Sufficient Grace." Um, grace is undeserved favor. The grace of God is His granting of good things to those who only deserve punishment. How many know that on our own, without God, we only deserve punishment? Amen. The word sufficient means adequate or enough. I am an adequate helpmate to my wife. I am just enough. No more, no less, just enough. Sufficient grace speaks of the grace of God that grants salvation, preservation, and everything else that the believer needs in this life and in the life to come. Grace is an essential part of God's character. Grace is closely related to God's kindness, His love, and His mercy. And grace can be variously defined as God's favor toward the unworthy, which is us, or God's kindness on the undeserving, which is also us. In His grace, God is willing to forgive us and bless us abundantly, in spite of the fact that we don't deserve to be treated so well or dealt with so generously. How many of you deserve to not be treated well? No, don't raise your hand. Don't do that. How many of you have people in your life who you feel like doesn't deserve your grace? Not everybody at once now, okay? Sometimes, for those of you who've been here long enough, you know that I have 3 little kids who think that they're 20 and 21 and 16, but they're not. When you have, and even like grown kids, like as a parent, like it is essential for you to show grace to your kids, right? Because they need to be the ones that see your grace more than they see it from someone else. Because if they don't, they're going to go find somebody else to show it to them, and it may be the wrong person showing them the wrong kind of grace. Just throwing that out there. That was free, like grace. It's a gift. It didn't cost you nothing, okay? But grace is for those of us that are unrighteous, okay? And that would be for all of us, okay? We were unrighteous, according to Romans 3:10, and without means of justifying ourselves, Romans 3:20. Spiritually, we were destitute, blind, unclean, and dead. Our souls were in peril of everlasting punishment. Without the grace of God, our lives deserve punishment. Okay? On our own, we can do nothing good without God. God's grace is given to us even though we aren't perfect people. Okay? 2 Corinthians 12, verses 9 and 10 says, "But He said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." Without God's grace, we are just walking around in weakness. But grace makes us stronger. Grace turns insults into praise. Grace turns difficulties into easy breezy times. So today I want to talk to you about 3 truths about grace that are essential for our life. Okay, number 1, we must understand that grace is free. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to make sure our ducks are all lined up. We don't have to make sure our finances are in order. We don't even have to make sure our family's in order for God's grace to be given to us. It is free. It costs you absolutely nothing. Okay? And sometimes when God gives us grace, He wants us to show grace to other people. I'm just going to throw that in there. Okay? Because there are people in our life, some that we know, some that we don't know, that need our grace. It could be the person that cut you off in traffic. They need your grace, not your middle finger. Am I right? Y'all know how many times I have been in the car with a Christian, not my wife, even though she wants to sometimes, not my parents, not me, but I've been in the car with other Christians in traffic, and people will cut them off, and they will tell them that they're number one. I'm like, okay, this is great. I like it. Totally not what God wants you to do, but that's okay. But just as God gives us grace when we don't deserve it, He wants us to give grace to other people when they don't deserve it. Your kids, your business partners, your classmates, and yes, unfortunately, your spouse. Trudy, Ron needs your grace. I just know these things, Trudy. I just know these things. I'm just kidding. So anyone who has received a gift understands that a gift is much different from a loan, which requires repayment or return by the recipient. The fact that grace is a gift means that nothing is owed in return. God gives you grace without wanting anything back from you. He just does it because He's good like that, and He loves you that much that He just gives you stuff for free. There is no cost to the person who receives the gift. A gift is free to the recipient, although it is not free to the giver who bears the expense. The gift of salvation cost us sinners nothing, but the price of such an extravagant gift came at a great cost for our Lord Jesus, who died in our place. Because of God's grace, Jesus died on the cross. And because Jesus died on the cross, we can have grace. Amen? Thank you. All right, Ephesians 2:8. It says, "For it was only through this wonderful grace that we believed in Him. Nothing we did could ever earn His salvation, for it was the gracious gift from God that brought us to Christ." Sometimes we run around like chickens with our little heads cut off, trying to earn things from God when He never told us to do that to begin with. God is the type of Father that He will give His kids gifts whether they deserve it or not. My favorite gift, my favorite free gift that I give to my children are fun times at Nanny's house and Grammy's house. They may be wild Banshee Indians all week, but because I love them so much and because I'm a gracious Father, I will give them the gift of spending time at Nanny's house or Grammy's house, even if they don't deserve it. I'm happy to do that. More than happy. You take them, Mom. I'll come back at like tomorrow, pick them up. That's really, I mean, I love my kids. I really do. But that is one of the best things that I've ever done for my kids. Or done for myself, really, but, you know. But grace was never designed to be something that we earn. Grace was always meant to be an avenue by which we can sit at Jesus' feet for the rest of our lives. It was meant to be a way where we can have free access to the throne of God, to approach Him with the things that are on our heart and mind. And it's because of grace that our access to Him will always be approved. Always. The other day I was at the gas station. I had to fill up my truck, and then I need to fill up my gas tanks for my lawnmower. And I went to the gas station that I always go to, and I put my card in the slot, and I did that 3 times. And every time it came back, denied. I was like, okay, this is weird. I just got paid, so I know I got money in there. Why is this happening? And because I'm a good little boy and I listen to what my Father in heaven tells me, He said, go to the other gas station, the one you don't like going to. I said, okay, fine. So I went over there, and I put my card in. It accepted it, filled my gas tank, filled my other tanks, went on about my way. And sometimes we think that we have to purchase God's gift of grace. Sometimes we think we have to purchase things from God in order for him to give them to us. And that's just not the case. You see, we don't have a spiritual card that we insert into a slot to receive grace from God. It just pops up on the front porch. Here you go. Here's my grace. Take it. Give it to other people. It's free. It's not going to cost you nothing. But too many times we feel like we have to earn God's grace. We have to earn God's love. And he never said that. He just gives it to us because that's his nature. Point number 2, his grace has brought you where you are today. 1 Corinthians 15:10 says, "But God's amazing grace has made me who I am, and his grace to me was not fruitless. In fact, I worked harder than all the rest, yet not in my own strength, but God's, for his empowering grace is poured out upon me." Now, I shared this in the first service, and I'm going to share it with you. But when I read that verse, or as I was reading that verse in the first service, God told me to do something. I didn't really want to do it, but because I'm a nice little boy and do what my father says, I did it anyway, okay? So I prefaced this in the first one, and I'll preface it in this one, that sometimes when I talk about spiritual stuff, I get emotional, okay? But don't think of it as I'm crying, just think of it as I have really bad allergies, okay? I'm just going to preface that just in case the waterworks happen, okay? So, me and my wife, we've been either dating or married for 13 years, I think. 12, 13, something like that. She's not in here to yap at me, so I'm just going to say 13 and go with that. Seems like forever, but there was, yeah. Oh, I know it's recorded. She's going to watch it later. It's okay. But there were, over the course of our relationship, there's been a handful of instances where, we've had to fight through some things, but there were two in particular that God wants me to share with you, okay? So just bear with me as I get through it. There was a time when we were dating, and I went over to her parents' house. I think I went over there for dinner or something, and after dinner, her parents had gone and done something else, and we were in the living room just having conversation, whatever. And I don't know how this happened or what started it, but we had a really big argument. Really big. I couldn't tell you what it was about. I just know it was a bad enough argument to the point where I got up, walked out, slammed the door behind me, got in my truck, slammed that door. And at that time, I had like a little single cab Dodge Ram pickup, and it had one of those console things that, flip up and down. And I flipped that sucker down, and I made the mistake of having my window down so she could hear what was getting ready to happen. And it's their house, and then like two more houses, and then a stop sign. And I get to that stop sign, and I'm like mad. I'm not cussing. I'm not, none of that stuff. But I'm mad, and I just go whack about 3 or 4 times on the middle console because I was mad. And I found out later that she heard it from 3 houses down with the front door closed. Like, good grief, that's a powerful hit. Maybe I should be a boxer. Or, one of those, you see those videos where they have like those slapping contests and wham, knocks a dude out. I probably could have done that. But I drive a little ways down the street, and I'm like, nope, I'm not going to bed like this. So I turn around, pull back up in her driveway, and I guess she was waiting on the other side of the door for me, because whenever I knocked on the door, like as soon as I knocked, she like opened it up and had that look on her face like, what are you doing here? Which is the same look I get every day when I show up at the house now, when I get home from work. What are you doing here? I live here. Let me in. Move. But I opened the door, and she came outside, and we talked it out, and she showed me the grace that I needed to receive in order to get past that moment. Then there was a time I think it was the end of 2020. We were at a different church at the time, and we were going through some stuff spiritually, and it was rocking our marriage like big time. And come to find out, we we had heard, through the grapevine that there were some people at the past church that were praying against our marriage, and they were praying against other people's marriage. And that's something that should never happen in church. And to those that are newer here, I can assure you that will never happen in this one. But we found out that there were people praying against our marriage to the point where we were getting rocked spiritually, almost to the point where we were going to, take some time apart. And at that time, the girls were younger, and my son was like 1, and that wouldn't have been good for them at all. And so, I don't think either one of us have prayed harder than we did in that particular season. It was about a 3 or 4 month span. And then we came over here, and we started coming. I think my parents have been coming on Wednesday nights over here, maybe during one of the other services on Sunday morning. And they were, trying to get us to come over here, and so we had come over here to try it out. And the first Sunday, as soon as I walked in the door, I just felt like this weight was dropped off my shoulders. Came in the service, and halfway through worship, Stacy stopped and spoke a word from God over me. I don't remember what it was, but I remember she stopped and spoke a word over me, and just even more of God's love just came over me in that moment. But I say all that to say that without God's grace, we wouldn't be here right now. Without God's grace, some of us wouldn't be here right now. Some of us we've all walked different journeys to get to where we are. But some of us, some of y'all have walked journeys that I wouldn't dream of walking on. But because of God's grace, it's brought you here. It's brought you to where you are. It's made you who you are today. But God knows your past. He was there with you every step of the way, whether you acknowledged Him or not. He brought you to where you are today by His grace so that you can be used to minister to those around you. Not because you're a perfect person or because you have everything put together and lined up, but in spite of your past, in spite of what that looks like, you are the perfect person for what God has called you to do. You're not a perfect person, because none of us are perfect, but for what God has called you to do, and because of His grace, you are the perfect person for what He's called you to do. But without His grace, that's not possible. The beauty of His grace is that we get to come as we are, and He does the work to get us where He wants us to be. God's gift of grace is free. Okay, we don't have to do anything to earn it. And, God is a gentleman. He will not go anywhere where He's not allowed to go. So when God offers you the gift of grace, take it. Because without it, we can't function. We can't operate the way we need to operate. We aren't saved without grace. This week when I was prepping for the sermon, I was reading the story in Luke about the 2 thieves on the cross that were next to Jesus. And I've been in church since I was in the womb. Okay, that's a really long time. And all this time until this week, it did not dawn on me that both thieves mocked Jesus on the cross. You only hear about one mocking him and the other one, asking for forgiveness or whatever, and Jesus taking him in and they go up to heaven together. But I did not realize until this week that both of them mocked Jesus on the cross. And in Luke 23, 40 and 43, I think it's earlier in that chapter where it talks about both of them mocking Jesus. But in Luke 23:40 and 43, this is after one of the thieves, gets the revelation that, oh, this is the guy. He is who he says he is. He says to the other criminal, "Don't you fear God, since you are under the same sentence? We are punished justly for what we are getting, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Without God's grace, that thief is going to die and go to hell. But because he acknowledged that Jesus was who he says he was, and because of Jesus' character, because of God's character, Jesus showed him grace on that day, and when that thief took his last breath, he went with Jesus to heaven. But that doesn't happen without God's grace. My third point is this: grace is the reason behind every deliverance. Psalm 44 verses 3 through 8 says, "It was not by their sword that they won the land, nor did their arm bring them victory. It was your right hand, your arm, and the light of your face, for you loved them. You are my king and my God who decrees victories for Jacob. Through you we push back our enemies. Through your name we trample our foes. I put no trust in my bow. My sword does not bring me victory, but you give us victory over our enemies. You put our adversaries to shame. In God we make our boast all day long, and we will praise your name forever. Apart from God, you can do nothing. Apart from his grace, you can do nothing. You may have the best clothes, the best house, the best car, the best friends, but without God's grace, that means nothing. God has taken you from where you were, brought you to where you are today because of his grace. God's glory is shown in every victory. He makes a way where there is no way. Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel should have been eaten up in 2 minutes because he was lion lunch. But because of God's grace, nothing happened to him. Paul and Silas in prison. They were supposed to probably rot in prison because of preaching in places where they weren't supposed to be preaching. But because of God's grace, there was an earthquake that happened, the prison doors opened, and they walked out like nothing had ever happened because of God's grace. Jairus' daughter was dead, lifeless, and because of God's grace, Jesus was like, "She's just asleep. You're just overreacting. She's just asleep." But because of his grace, Jairus' daughter breathed life again. The woman with the issue of blood, she went 13 years trying to find a cure for this problem. No doctor could tell her what it was. And then she heard that Jesus was coming into town the same time he was going to Jairus' house to heal his daughter. And she knew that all she had to do was touch the end of his coat and she would be healed. And that's exactly what she did. But because of Jesus' grace, that's what happened. She was healed in that moment. Some of us, we just need to touch God. Just touch a little bit of God in our life. Tim, if you'll come. One of my favorite basketball players to watch was Kobe Bryant. He wasn't my favorite player, but he was one of the guys that I used to love watching because he just had that go get it attitude. Like, nothing's going to stand in my way. I'm going to go get what's mine. And he had that attitude where nobody could stop him. Nobody could do anything against him because he was going to do whatever he wanted. Okay? and he had the nickname of the Black Mamba. And there's a term that's floated around in the basketball sector called the Mamba mentality, which means no matter what's standing in my way, I'm going to blow right through it, and nothing's going to stop me. Well, there was a Summer Olympics. I think it was it '08? It was the '08 Summer Olympics, and USA and Spain were playing for the gold medal. And one of Kobe's teammates in the NBA played for Spain, and they were like brothers. Kobe's friend is the godfather to his children, and he's involved in all the kids' stuff, and especially now that Kobe's gone. The USA was getting ready to play Spain in the gold medal game, and Kobe gets all the guys together on the USA team, and he said, "I know what they're going to run the very first play, and that last screen is going to go through Powell, which was his buddy's name. The last screen is going to be Powell, and I'm gonna blow him up." And his teammates were like, "Dude, are you serious? This is your friend, really? You're just gonna just do him like that?" He's like, "I'm here to win a basketball game. That's what I'm gonna do." And sure enough, the guy that Kobe was guarding was coming around all these screens, and his buddy was the last one. And his buddy steps up to set the screen, and Kobe just boom runs right through him, lowered his shoulder in his chest, and just knocked the dude out. And everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, why would you do that?" "I'm trying to win the game." And Powell, the friend, knew that's how Kobe played. That was his mentality anytime he played basketball. And from that point on, Powell could have been like, "We're not friends anymore, dude. You just laid me out in front of the whole country, national television. You just laid me out in front of all these people, and you didn't even, offer your hand to pick me up. Dude, I'm not talking to you anymore." But because Powell knew how Kobe played, he showed him grace. Sometimes there's things in our path that maybe we don't have regard for what God has done in that moment, that we just plow through it, and we don't even acknowledge God in the moment. But because of God's grace, He's like, "You know what? It's okay. It's all right. You need to blow off a little steam. That's okay. But my grace is enough for you, so I'm going to keep giving it to you." And some of us, we think that we have to earn it. We have to earn things from God, and He never said that. It's free. The gift of grace is free to us. We just have to accept it. God has given us the authority to freely approach His throne. The Bible instructs us to approach His throne with confidence. We don't need to have everything put together and be perfect. We just need to come with confidence. I teach and coach basketball, and throughout the course of the season, I had a freshman that I had going back and forth from JV to varsity, and as a coach, you can see things in your players that they may not see yet. Okay, just like parents, you might see things in your kids that they don't see yet. And there's this one kid on the team, and I love all my guys, but this kid, this kid has the potential to be a really good basketball player. But he's at that stage where he's just not real sure of himself. He's not confident in what he can do. And you can kind of see that like when he plays in a junior varsity game, he plays a lot better, and then when he gets in a varsity game, he's kind of more like timid and like laid back a little bit. And I would tell him all the time, like, "Dude, you know what to do. Just go out there and do it." And last week, our season ended earlier than what we wanted to, and I was doing what I call exit interviews with all my guys, where I meet with them one-on-one and talk about the season and expectations for the next one. And I was sitting down with them, and I said, dude, you're only a freshman, okay? But I see the potential that you have, okay? And I see the talent that you have, and you have the ability to be a really good basketball player. But you need to be confident in yourself. You need to be confident in what you can do. Be confident in your strengths, because you bring a lot to both of these teams. But you've got to be confident in what you're doing. And I want you to see, and I want you to know that I think you have the talent and the ability to be a really good player. But you have to be confident in that. And when we approach God, when we approach His throne, that's what He wants from us. He wants us to be confident in our approach. He's confident in giving us the gift of grace. He wants us to be confident when we approach His throne, because we have easy access. We don't have to ask permission to come to Him. We don't have to jump through hoops to get to Him. Okay, back in David's time and all that other time, you had to have permission to go see the king. Even Esther, as the queen, as the wife of the king, she had to have permission. But whenever the king was messing with her people, she approached his throne with confidence and said, "Look, this cannot happen. This is wrong. You shouldn't be doing this." But she approached His throne with confidence. And when we approach God, that's how we need to approach Him. We need to approach Him with confidence, because we have free access. We have Wi-Fi, fast speed access. Okay, we don't have dial-up access to God where we have to wait for it to load and go. We have Wi-Fi access where all we have to do is just walk in there, and He's ready. My child is here. What do you need, my child? I wish I had that much with my kids. What do you need, my child? Sometimes it's like, oh, what do you want? But God doesn't do that. He sees you walk in. He's like, come sit down, my son. Come sit down, my daughter. I've been waiting to hear from you all day. Approach Him with confidence, because His grace is there for you. Whatever it is that you're going through, His grace is so much more than that for you to overcome. But without grace, we aren't the people that we are today. Without grace, we can't be saved. Without grace, we can't have the things that we have and be surrounded by the people that we're surrounded by without the grace of God. Once a gift has been given, ownership of the gift has been transferred, and it's now ours to keep. When a gift changes hands, the giver permanently relinquishes all rights and cannot take back the gift in the future. God's grace is ours forever. In the giving of a gift, the giver voluntarily forfeits something that he owns, willingly losing what belongs to him so the recipient will profit from it. The Bible teaches that grace is completely unmerited. It says quite clearly that we do not deserve God's salvation. It's not on the screen, but Romans 5:8 through 10, and paraphrasing, it says that God demonstrates His own love for us in this, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were God's enemies, we were reconciled to Him through the death of His Son. Without God's grace, that doesn't happen. We're just destined for eternal hell without the grace of God. So the question that I want to leave you with before Justin comes to close is, with as much grace as God has given you in your life, how much of that grace have you shown to someone else? I don't think we understand how much we can impact somebody else's life just by showing them grace. Our human nature is to jump on people when they do something wrong to us, when they say something we don't like. But how many times do we jump on God? How many times do we say stuff to God that He may not like? But He still shows us grace anyway. So, Jim, the next time Linda grabs at you, just show her a little bit of grace. Okay? God's grace is free. We don't have to do anything to earn it. It's just there for the taking. It's like free samples at Sam's. You just walk up and take it. Don't have to pay for it. You just walk up, take it. And if you want seconds, you can go back for seconds. God doesn't care. He's got plenty of it to give. But you have to be willing to receive it. So be thankful for the grace that God has given you in your life, and be thankful for the grace that He's going to give you later in your life. But also be thankful that He's given you enough grace where you can give it to somebody else that may need it. Somebody that may not deserve it. Somebody that may not be, they may not even want your grace. But because you've been given enough grace by God, you can give it to them whether they want it or not. But God's grace is free. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have everything lined up before God gives you anything, much less grace. But God's grace is enough for you. God's grace it's an abundant amount. Some of us He's given more grace to than others because we need more of it. But He's always willing to give that to you. You just have to be willing to accept it. Accept the free gift of grace.